Today in social studies, I would like you to be in your social studies book on page 19. If you don't have it yet, make sure you get your social studies book, pause this, and find page 19. On that page, at the very top, it says, use map scales. Now, in this case, because scales can have kind of a lot of different meanings. A map scale is going to tell you how big is this map compared to the real thing that it's a map of. So let's kind of read a little bit, and some of this will make a little more sense as we read through. All right. No matter what type of map you use, a map scale is a useful tool. A map scale shows the distance from one location to another. Map makers use different types of map scales to measure the distance between locations. So, because a map is just a small model of the actual thing that you're looking at, you want to know, well, how far is it from one place to another on the map for what the real thing would be? So, let's look at the first one, and I'm going to give you an example of how to use it. This one is called a linear scale. Do you see the word line in the word linear? Yeah, that's because it's going to use a line to help you know how far something is. So here we go. A linear scale uses a straight line. Miles and kilometers are shown on the line. A linear scale is best to measure long distances, like the distance from Cincinnati to Cleveland. Now, here's an example of a linear scale. 0 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles, 300 miles. So if I were to put this on my map, this would show me how far I'm going. This is the same, but it's in a different measurement called kilometers. It's a different unit. It's a metric system unit that we would use if we were in Canada or kind of really anywhere else in the world than here. All right. Now, if you look back at page 18, it mentioned two cities, Cincinnati and Cleveland. Now, here's Cincinnati down here. Here is Cleveland up there. Now, I didn't want to have to make you search for those things, so I'm just showing them to you. Now, let's say we wanted to figure out how far apart those two cities are. Let's get a little bit closer so it's a little easier to see. Maybe get it a little better. The focus isn't going to be great, but hopefully you got your book so it won't make a big difference. All right, down here is our linear scale. Notice it says that 0 miles is here. There's 20, 40, 60 miles. So it's a different scale than the picture of a linear scale on the other page, isn't it? But it's still a linear scale. Now, in order for me to do this, I'm going to do something with my pencil. I could use a ruler, but sometimes I don't have a ruler. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my pencil, and I'm going to make a mark. There's the tip of my pencil at 60, and I'm going to make a mark on my pencil where 0 would be, if I can do that. Doesn't want to write on my pencil. Okay, you can kind of see it's got a little bit of a mark there, doesn't it? From here to the tip is 60 miles. Now, I need to figure out how far is it from here down to there. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my pencil with my little marking on it. If I can find my marking again. There it is. And I'm going to make a mark every time I get to the tip of my pencil. There's one. I'm going to move it ahead. There's one. I'm going to move it ahead. There's another one. I'm going to move it ahead. And this time, it's kind of just to the where my pencil is sharpened. So that's about 40 more miles. So this last little bit is like 40 miles. Now all I have to do is figure out, well, I had 1, 2, 3 of the actual 60 miles, and 60, 80, 6, 12, 18, 180 plus 40 would be 220 miles. So it's about 220 miles from Cincinnati up to Cleveland. And that was using a linear scale. Now, it's important to know how to use these because you're going to be using linear scales on Friday in order to do part of an assignment. All right, I'm going to back off just a little bit there. Whoop, that's getting closer. Okay, so that's one type of scale that you might come across when it comes to map scales. Okay, all right, the next one is called a word scale. As you can imagine, they're just going to use words for what they're doing in this one. A word scale, also called a language scale, actually has words in it. You might use a word scale if you're making a map of a city. For example, 1 inch on your map might be equal to 1 mile in the city. So here, instead of using a linear scale, because they didn't need as big of a space, they just used the words 1 inch equals 1 mile. Okay, well then, if I have a ruler and I measure 3 inches, I know that it's going to be 3 miles. So 3 inches on my map would be 3 miles. And you could use other things. You could use centimeters, and instead of miles, you could use kilometers. Or you could even say 1 inch equals 4 miles. It depends on how big the city is and how big your map will be. Here's the last kind. A fractional scale uses fractions like 1/100th or 1 over 100. So a fraction can look like that. That's the easy way to see a fraction. But they can also just do a little slashy line to make a fraction as well. Now, a fraction is something that we might see sometimes on your assignments. So if something is worth 10 points and you got 1 wrong, you get 9 correct out of 10. That's a fraction. In this one, the fraction is going to tell you how much is on the real map compared to, or the map compared to the real thing. So let's keep reading. This type of scale would be useful if you were making a map of a small area, such as your classroom. 1 inch on your map might be equal to 100 inches in the classroom. So you can see that their fraction, both of these are going to be inches. Up here, you are using a line and you are using something like miles. And same here, you use things like miles or kilometers. But here you're going to use the same measurement. So like 1 inch is really 100 inches. They also did it like this because a fraction can be shown like that. It's really called a ratio, where you have 1 to 100. Okay, so 1 inch is 100 inches on the map. And again, this one's going to be used for smaller areas. All right. Now, hopefully that made sense because you're going to need to use it to help yourself when we do our assignment on Friday. There's nothing to actually do assignment-wise, just hopefully you understood map scales.